By the way, is it Twitter? Is it X? Were you Xing? I don't.
It's X, but I still call it tweet.
Yeah.
Right. I also don't call it the Willis Tower. It was the Sears Tower. It's all at the Sears Tower.
And we're back. That's right, StarWipes, your favorite Reddit podcast. We're back. It's myself, my dear friend Michael Kamas. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Jeff. You mean there's more than one Reddit podcast?
There's more than one Reddit podcast. I think that there's probably 5 or 6 ones just about our editors, because do you listen to a lot of podcasts about Reddit? I know I don't.
I'm busy making my own podcasts.
That's right. Don't we all have a pod at this point? All right, let's do the setup here. Just in case you don't know, Michael and I, we kind of cover this addiction we have called Reddit, specifically called our editors. I'm, for better or worse, that Greeny's Mac mod guy. And what we do is we kind of break this down, although we're going to break the rules a little bit here. The traditional item is we cover a couple items. We go over the Ask Anything career thread. We do a little bit of short form. We do a little bit of long form. We hit you with the dopamine hit and tell you where to find us. Of course, Michael, it's been a while since NAB. It's really been, it's been like almost embarrassing. This could be like season 3 almost.
We've done one since NAB, right? Didn't we do one around IBC?
Around IBC, around September. And
okay.
I blame myself because generally speaking, I won't push publish until we get the next one recorded. So now that we have this one in the can,
I blame you too.
Right, you should blame me, right? My kids blame me, it's all normal stuff. Let's actually go ahead here and get started. I think, this one, if we could get an applause sound, I absolutely would have an applause sound because the strike is over.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Well, it's really the second strike to be over because I don't think we covered the writer strike. I think the writers did a brilliant job. They said, you got to have 3 writers in the room. We don't care how much AI you use. You got to have 3 writers. I haven't looked into the details of the SAG-AFTRA stuff. Have you?
A little bit. And the thing that was really sticking out, which just Google Justine Bateman and you'll get, a whole litany of analogies to cannibalism. But, and I'm not joking about that. I think the big sticking point right now is, and I'm paraphrasing, that any likeness that is used for AI still has to pay the person the AI was based off of for the amount of days it would have taken to accomplish said goal. So I think if you were to put this into, well, we're going to have an AI as a background actor doing X, Y, and Z, that would normally take 2 days. So we're going to pay that actor 2 days, but we still get to use that likeness. Again,
interesting.
I'm paraphrasing, but that, I guess, was the happy medium to get the talent paid, but still ensure that the powers that be can still use their likeness for AI purposes. And I think Justine Bateman used the analogy, we're negotiating with cannibals, right? Here we are discussing how they're going to eat you, if they're going to boil you, if they're going to, stir fry you. When we're missing the point, they're still going to eat you. It's something that we have to take a harder stance on. But until more than just the summary comes out, which I think at this point we've only heard the summary, we kind of have to take this with a, no pun intended, grain of salt until we see the actual verbiage.
Yeah, the ones where I'm really curious, and I'm sure there are clauses about it, is what happens when they use AI background generation, and there are 10 people. Are they paying into the union fund for something like that? I don't know. What I am seeing is a lot of friends around scripted suddenly say everybody's talking about when do we go back to work. And that's encouraging.
While we were in the virtual green room before we started recording, I actually just got an email saying that was reporting on the dates that TV production is going to start again. I have not read it, no pun intended, because we were busy prepping for this. But as of the recording, I think those dates should be out there when this is heard.
I'm hoping, and that's just a generalized good piece of news. Speaking of other news, I think the next one that's got some interest here is Apple did their scary fast. Look at Reddit load. Their scary fast event, and a lot of people noticed Final Cut was a backseat in that event, the M3s. First item around the M3s, I've heard a lot of interesting talk that the reason Apple dropped their newest chip was mostly because their sales for Macs and iPads are off. And it was a way for them to possibly entice people into buying right before the holiday season. The second, Apple doesn't just only support their tool. This was cut, as I understand, in Premiere and finished in Resolve, which are both great stories because Apple wants you to do it on a Mac. Interestingly, about this is about 13 days ago when we recorded. About 7 days ago, 6 days ago, in Cupertino was the Final Cut Creative Summit on November 6th. Justine was there.
I'm surprised this wasn't the Premiere Pro DaVinci Resolve Summit.
Yeah, well, interestingly, dead serious. There have been a bunch of, aside from Adobe Max, there's actually some specific Premiere Pro events. There's not really the same for Resolve, and I don't think that's a good or a bad. Beyond, I get to speak at the Premiere one, I get to speak at the Final Cut one, I get to speak hopefully at the Blackmagic one. They've done one or two over the years. But this event, the Final Cut one, it's kind of unique. It's in Cupertino. And so even if you go, I'm not that huge of a Apple fan, I get to go, or Final Cut fan, I get to walk behind the doors. I got to walk outside and inside of the spaceship. We learned about hermetically sealed doors that are like 20 tons and take 8 minutes to open. It's a gorgeous campus. It's a gorgeous campus along those lines.
You don't find it a little bit incongruent that they had the Scary Fast event and they didn't show Final Cut in any of their videos? It wasn't used to cut it, and then they have a summit a week after, which is all about, hey, look at the new features of Final Cut, and hey, it's not dead.
There were a couple new features. I will tell you, they did let us use some of the M3s. I don't know how I would know that the M3 was particularly better or faster. I think they were like playing back 900 streams of ProRes, something like that.
Well, you and I both know some big YouTubers who would be like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. I need 900 angles of multicam. But that's... After a while, there's diminishing returns.
There is what I thought was really interesting along those lines is there was a part. In fact, let's punch those up. Take a look at this. There is this After Effects A benchmark. So this is over on After Effects. I want to just go in closer. So Puget Systems or Puget or how wonderful guys over.
They're French. I didn't think they were French. Puget Systems. Puget Systems.
They're over on the West Coast. They're really wonderful people. They're PC builders, and they've built an After Effects West Coast. They built the After
East
Effects.
Coast.
No, they're West Coast, man. Don't do that to me. They've built a suite to test Resolve, test Premiere, test After Effects, and somebody who I'm going to go based on just the text that I think that's kanji. I think that's Japanese. They went and showed you like what an M1 Ultra is. Mm-hmm. This is the one that's really interesting to me because right now, the Mac Studio is only M2s. The M2 Ultra is slower than the M3 Max Pro, which means right this second, November 14th, 15th, whatever it is, if you go out and you buy a laptop, it's outperforming, at least for this, I think this is a multi-core performance. It's outperforming their top-of-the-line desktop, which I think is interesting.
But I mean, if you look at it, it's not like an order of magnitude.
It's not.
I take that hit for the expandability, to be honest with you.
The funny thing is about the Ultras are just two Max chips glued together. So there's something interesting there. And the other part is there's no GPU. There's very little GPU in After Effects. I've been working on and updating for an article I wrote. This article was on OWC. I don't know if the next generation of it will be or not. But basically, I go through like the TLDR of what you want to buy. And I've been just categorizing here the notes on updating it. I have found that instead of having this conversation over and over and over again on editors or anywhere else, it's just nice to go, here's the TLDR. What do you want? You want a laptop or you want a desktop? You're going to spend a little money. You're going to spend a lot. You're not going to spend a lot of money. Buy the mini. You're going to spend a lot of money. The real interesting one, Michael, did you know that there is a Mac Pro with the M2 Ultras in it? I didn't. You can buy the cheese grater, the new cheese. There is an M2 version with card slots that can't take a GPU with card slots, and it's like $2,000 more. It's got 8 Thunderbolt ports. It's more Thunderbolt ports than I've ever seen. It's an interesting box. The pure question I would have with it is, do I need to put in a card slot? Because otherwise I'm looking at the studios. But yeah, Apple has a slot-based M2 system.
It's on my list to talk to integrators that I normally work with here on the West Coast to see, look, when you're getting new orders, and now they'll start to get orders now the production is picked back up, are you getting Ultras or are you still going with Mac Pros? Because it seems to me that after the AJA and the Blackmagic cards, are due for a refresh because you're not buying new ones every year. When it's time for a refresh, it's like, why do I need these card slots anymore, right? The now external ports are fast enough. And the only time we're going to really run into it is when you run into large like Pro Tools rooms, right? That need that expandability for processing on those PCIe cards. So I think it's very, it kind of signals that the Mac Pro, at least in my estimation, isn't long for this world because you no longer need the slots to get the bandwidth you need.
The other real interesting part here in general is for Apple, who is typically, part of the Steve Jobs era was, we're going to make things simple enough for people. They're getting more and more convoluted in their hardware offerings. Maybe that's on purpose. Maybe that's to stratify them. I don't know. But you've got the Mini, the iMac, the Studio, the Pro. And I don't know what you use the Pro for. And the laptops are just Air 13s, 14s, 15. It's a little ragged out there in the Apple app.
There's, I don't want to say there's decision paralysis by any stretch, but there certainly is a lot of options and a lot of bleed over, and a lot of it feels unnecessary at this point.
I'm not going to name names, but I will tell you, if you go to some of your PC manufacturers and you go to configure a system, decision paralysis is just stellar. Wait, I want this, and now suddenly I can't use that power supply, but I was going to put 2 SSDs in the system. Oh my Lord. That's
why you need to reach out to our friends at Puget Systems on the West Coast and have them and configure a system on their website. They're good people over there.
Absolutely. I have to say the highest kudos to the team, including Matt Bach, who's just a great guy, and really they're clear what they do that no other PC manufacturer does is they go, here are how we got to our benchmarks, and here's what we think is right and wrong around systems integration. So I think that's sort of what I aspirationally was looking to do in that article, was go, hey, here's what I would buy and why. Let's move over to just our quick, normally we do 2 Ask Anything career threads, but today I think we're just going to do the one, and it's the one you picked out, which is, and I really like this. It's been deleted, but we've got Tiki Thunder's response. The item was, I'm in school for, I think it was computer design or computer programming, and also media video editing. Which should I choose? And Tiki Thunder did like this great, he's, by the way, he's now on our mod team. Hi, Tiki Thunder. We'll talk about why in a second. But basically, there's just this idea that you can find work in this field being the technical human being, not just I'm a creative.
I have so much to add on this because I've been preaching and evangelizing this since my career started. And after I stopped being an audio editor full time, I got into the technical realm, and you start working in the channel, right? The companies that end up selling products to the end users, right? So Apple may not sell direct to you, but a reseller may sell Apple gear to you because they'll build it and do the support and all that. And the amount of people that came into the channel and would work for a reseller and learn how to build a machine properly for the software that it was going to run, what NLE it was going to run, and learn how to configure cards and firmware and learn how to optimize for this and that. They would then go in and install these systems at post facilities. And that's when you ingratiate yourself to the folks that are there. And then when a job opens up, they're like, well, hell, you already know our workflow. You already built our systems. You said you can edit. Come on in. Or what Tiki was saying, which is don't even go the reseller route. Get in as a technical person at these facilities that do post, because then you know, A, where all the bodies are buried. B, you know exactly when someone is sick, when there's new work coming in, and you're higher at the top of the list. And again, this isn't something that I'm just saying, well, this would be a good idea. I've seen a dozen folks. In fact, a really good friend of mine that told me this story. He said, look, I wanted to be an editor for years. I wanted to cut unscripted. And he said, I realized that if I could work for, I'm not going to name the company, if I work for this company, I will get to go to these places, meet these people, and eventually get a job. And he did, and ended up cutting reality. And Tiki has in there 5 years. I think he may have done 2 or 3 at most. And he was cutting stuff that was that was on broadcast. So it can totally be done. You got to know your stuff. It's not like, read a manual and, hey, I'm technical. But if you can get in with the confidence, with the employer's confidence that you can handle technical stuff, then all you have to do is plant that seed that I can edit. And as long as you have a good relationship, you will get that opportunity.
One of the interesting, and this will feed into something in about 90 seconds from now. One of the real interesting underpinnings there is Tiki Thunder also wrote this Bang It job about networking. But I think that there's this freedom of the internet in whatever level, whether it's posting your color work on Instagram or it feels like you can short circuit putting in a certain amount of time or trust or reliability. And I think that's kind of a classic struggle that we all want to get into that chair, all want to get into that, if we aren't all aware of it by this point, the very few directing gigs doesn't mean you get to boss everybody around. It just means that you're the person who's behind is on the line about stuff. The only person I ever know who could boss everybody around was the executive, the EP. And even that to a limited degree, the client often. Yeah. But I think Tiki does a great job of pointing out that at 30, you're still viable and employable. And technically, I don't know about you, but a lot of the technical stuff in my head's got a 5-year lifespan.
Yeah, there will come up, if you were to go and get a certification, right, which is a whole nother discussion on whether certifications are worth it. They keep those certifications. They start at a certain point, and then after 5 or 6 years, that information gets cycled out, right? So they don't teach that old gear because it's not as necessary. So that kind of falls right in line with that.
My painful moment is realizing this came up at the summit, that evidently in the back of my brain that the Macintosh 2 FX from 1989 needs a different SCSI terminator than the regular Macintosh 2. And why my brain chose to hang on to that, no idea. None whatsoever. The thing about the field, the thing that we always talk about, the thing that comes up over and over again, aside from networking, is how much people get paid. And it would be wrong for us not to mention right now, and we're going to try and get both episodes out before the end of the month. So one goes out this week, one goes out maybe next week, this one, we'll record again. I want to get it out because I want people to fill out the BCPC survey. It's transparency at its highest level. It's why, Michael, if you go to post a gig on editors or colorists or video editing, you have to make it possible for somebody to know what they're getting paid. And the beautiful part about the BCPC is this is about the closest we get to transparency in our industry.
Katie Hinson is a godsend. I think this is either her 8th or 9th year doing this. And to your point, this is the only way we can keep employers honest and truthful and keep them paying what you're worth. So by filling this out, and if there's bad data that gets weeded through, but giving honest data about what you've earned per gig or this year. Obviously, if you're in the union, things have been rocky for various reasons, but that helps keep everyone making a livable wage. So it is infinitely important for you to follow the link. If you don't see the link, search for it and fill it out, because this is what's going to keep employers honest.
I love her enthusiasm for it. When she went and she pushed out about it, I said, try not to, this is going to blow your mind a little bit. I said, I'd like you to add a little bit of inclusion to people who might have vision or auditory processing stuff. And it was really touching for Katie to go, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. I think we need to be more inclusive, like Katie of all people, who's beautiful. She is one of the best human beings about that sort of stuff. I have a dear friend. She is a producer and she's mostly deaf. And she's one of the reasons why I believe everything we ever create should, and thankfully it gets got easier because of AI, everything should get some level of captioning at Storm Smith, who's phenomenal. But
just to go off on a tangent,
yeah, go
briefly, and I wrote an article about this, and we'll see if we can put this in the show notes, is that have you realized that the tools that create content for us to watch, and let's just use Premiere or Media Composer or Final Cut or Resolve, do you understand that for you to use those tools, you have to have great vision, you have to have fingers, you have to be fully functional, probably isn't the right term, but you have to be completely able-bodied in order to use these tools to create mass media. And I've always felt that there hasn't been a way that for these tools to be modified, to be created, to be used by people who are maybe neurodivergent or have other physical limitations. And that's always bothered me, that the media is crafted by folks who don't have these issues.
So I just ran across an editor this past week who's got a single-handed keyboard. A lot of editors do, but his other hand has got minimal functionality. And there is a couple, at least in the Mac OS, there are a couple of tools for accessibility that allow him to press a couple extra buttons to do a couple modifiers, and he's very, very functional as an editor. It's just a harder hurdle. It's harder to be a surgeon where one hand has got limited functionality, and it doesn't mean you can't be a great doctor. It just means it's harder for you to become a surgeon without that sort of fine motor control. The most important thing from this conversation, go to the BCPC piece.
Yes.
Fill out the survey, do it before the end of the month. So we, in this upcoming year, have the ability to go and say, hey, this is what they're sort of worth in our area, rather than it just being guesswork and undercutting each other for money. And on that note, that brings us to Networking 101 by the fine Tiki Thunder, who is now a mod of our editors. It's mostly a mod. I've actually given like mod powers to 2 or 3 people this week because they're so engaged about staying focused on topic, and they all, I've got a rule. I don't know if I've ever told you about this. I have a rule with our mod staff. Try not to ban anybody. Actively try not to ban anybody. The whole goal is, imagine somebody's having a bad day. I tend to write the bad cop email. They're like, hey man, did you mean this? And I get 1 or 2 reactions. I get 1 or 2. I get the, yeah, I'm just having a rough day. Thanks, and I get the F you 300 times, you're living in your mom's basement. One of them generally I'm kind of easygoing with. The other one, I'm just kind of like, there's just no point. You're right. We're not the spot for your community. You need to be somewhere else. This Networking 101, I think it's a phenomenal piece. So I said to Tiki, actually, before he wrote this, we were talking somewhere else, and I just said, dude, do you want to just be one of the mods? I have like 3 people I got to train up as mods. Not real hard, but important because I need people in the overnight hours. His thing was research, what's your story, telling the most important story of their own, playing the social game, putting them into practice, following everyone you can from step one, converting the cold lead into a warm one. As much as you and I have positive feelings, I don't want to say affection, but positive feelings to Bob Zellin, the idea of knocking on everybody's door over and over again probably isn't the best way to break in. I love that, converting the warm lead to a cold lead to warm one. But step 5, be awesome. The rest is up to you. Respectful, courteous, enthusiastic, rinse and repeat. And this line here, this will take a year. There is no shortcut. This is what I was alluding to before. I think Tiki nailed. Do I disagree with certain pieces? Sure. But this is the best piece I've seen on generalized networking for people who don't know how to network.
I think one of the key points that gets overlooked now, and this is partly a byproduct of the pandemic, partly a byproduct of just shifting social norms, is that we are still not at a point where you can do everything virtually and have a career that is going to be sustainable. I still firmly believe that networking events where there's a pressing the flesh, I still think that is very important. And while there are some jobs that you can get without meeting in person, I think for a longer relationship, and I think getting bigger clients, that one-on-one needs to be done. And I don't think we're quite out of that realm where we can throw that all away and say, I'm just going to do things from behind my computer. We're not at that time yet.
I don't think we're ever going to be at that time, for the simple reason. If I've got 10 people willing to come down to my office, willing to talk to me, and I've got 50 people virtually, who's going to take priority? It's going to almost always be the people who I get to meet and look into the eye, because I know they're going to show up for work. I know that they're going to at least talk to me. It's not that I don't believe that there's not great work virtually to be done, but all of it still occurs with the same truth, which is it's based on trust. And somebody can be there are grifters out there who can show up in person. But it's harder for the Nigerian male scammer, who sends you an email than it is for the Nigerian male scammer who shows up at your house, I guess.
I'm also, but just for me, I'm going to remember a face and a conversation than an email, which is in black and white, right? And you're going to interpret it through your lens, maybe not how that person wrote it. And if you're inundated with resumes or inundated with emails, you're going to forget names, especially when you're maybe using Reddit, where you're not even getting someone's real name, right? It could be just an avatar name. So the person you meet face to face, at least to me, is always going to be higher up on my list than something virtual.
100%. So, it's in the show notes. It'll be in the show notes when that networking. It's going to probably be part of the wiki and stuff like that for our editors, because I just think it's like a mandatory read at this point. We get a lot of people trying to break into the field. The field's here where nobody's gatekeeping. It really becomes whether or not you're willing to put in the work, because other people are if you're not. Just
Jeff, because you're a person that knows people, I would love, and I've said this before, I would love to see next time there's a convention or course or summit, budget for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour of how to network, like live, like what are icebreakers, what are do's and don'ts. And you know what? No one's going to sign up for it most likely because they don't want to look like I don't know how to talk to people, but say, look, we're just going to throw it in, and then everyone's forced to do it.
I'll do you one better. First, whatever the next event I'm involved with, I'll pitch it as a session, but I'll also pitch, I'd like to have Michael Kamas there. If I could get Tiki Thunder, I would. But if I can get Michael Kamas there, because I think between, part of the experience and part of being involved around Reddit, we see so much of this at a macro scale versus, any individual story. One of the most fascinating things I know about networking, or know about the people who've, are super crazy established, and I think you know this as well, nearly every single one of them has a different starting story. They have a different origin story. What worked for one person doesn't work for the next, because technically the door kind of closes behind them at that top level. Whoever the guy who's District 9 got the gig because he had a great YouTube short. And I'm not saying YouTube shorts aren't great. I'm saying the amount of people who launch into the field from a YouTube short just became a lot smaller because of it. So
I love stories like Zach Arnold, right? He had cut the O'Bannon Factor, I think is the name of the show he was doing. And he messaged people on Facebook who were working on projects he liked, which now, was a little bit of a faux pas, right? That's kind of stalking. But back then it was new enough. And that's how we got interviews for things like Burn Notice, right? So unfortunately, the ways to go about things changes with what's happening socially at the time. And the pandemic, to bring this full circle, has just accelerated that in yet another direction. And I think it's for folks who maybe are only used to going to events and meeting people. I think they need to learn some of the virtual ways of networking, just like 100%. I think the folks who are doing just virtual need to learn in-person stuff as well. It's a course correction, and it's something we have to do in our careers on an annual basis to make sure that we're going to stay employed.
Nobody's got this perfect. If they had this perfect, nobody would be looking for work. That's all I can tell you. So that was the warm side of things. What the social, the soft skills. There we go, the soft skills. I think that brings us perfectly into this recent item from Tom's Hardware that was posted 2 days ago about the Sandisk failures. And if you're not aware, Sandisk's 4 terabyte and 8 terabyte SSDs had a huge list of failures going on out there. And they thought it was a firmware fix. And there was at least one group that approached editors with I think it was ESUS, hey, we'll give you a free recovery tool, but it's not, it's like a bad solder joint or cheap solder. And yeah, ouch. And these are the same people who were behind G-Tech, which I don't even think, can you still find G-Tech as a brand right now?
Was that Toshiba?
It's Western Digital.
It's like a consolidation of the media industry. I can't keep track any longer. My apologies. But yeah, I think you can still get G-Tech stuff. I think so.
I was a G-Tech ambassador. I still love the brand. I still love, in fact, I probably have here somewhere. Yeah, right on my desk. It's these baffles that make the huge difference. The heat dissipation. They make some great stuff, but this one set of SanDisk items, man, SanDisk Stream 4 and 8 terabytes scared the hell out of me. And I don't know how they're going to address it short of swapping them out.
PSA, PSA, you should have multiple backups. Sorry to be that guy, but if your SanDisk craps out, you should have a backup somewhere on a different medium and hopefully a different type of drive. If it
data doesn't exist until it exists in at least 2 places. Unfortunately, we see way too much of it. In fact, we saw an exFAT problem this past week on our editors.
exFAT has problems? No.
exFAT is not your friend. exFAT is not your friend. Oh, and some people get emotional about that. Again, so that was this actually kind of lent into our short form. We went from that wider Ask Anything, and we've kind of fallen into our short form of things that need a quick mention. And I love that you picked this one coming up. So we're in that short form, we're well into that short form space. My clients always have some silly buzzword lingo on each project. What are you all hearing? And this is from Harpua 4207, currently on a project where client can't stop dropping flurry in the feedback. Let's put a flurry of images here. Include a flurry of our work here. Show a flurry of assets here. Last project was grit. Let's make this more gritty, grittier music, grittier shots. Humor me with your best and weirdest client buzzwords. Michael, you go first.
There's some that have kind of transcended, generations of creatives, right? Snappy, secret sauce, dynamic, more punchy. All these were mentioned in the sub. But I think there were 200 comments to this. The one that I still get a kick out of, and there's only a certain subset of folks who say this, is zhuzh. This
I'm
needs
not
more
com-
zhuzh.
I'm not
And usually
comfortable
it
with
comes
that.
from marketing people. I hear that a lot. Coming from more the audio realm, I used to have directors say, I want to have that more blue. And we're not talking music like, oh, I need this, more bluesy. No, it was, this doesn't feel blue enough. And I honestly would just have to say, oh, okay, and adjust something and hope that's what they meant. And if it wasn't, then readjust. But I still, to this day, if someone were to say that needs to be more orange, what? I still don't have a way of quantifying colors.
The ones
Yeah.
also that I get in there aspirationally, and like, I've looked through the thread. I throw up a little in my mouth every time somebody says, oh, can we make it more cinematic?
I think if someone says that, you need to level up your clientele, because I don't know any customer client paying full day rate would use that word.
I got one that goes right next to it. Oh, I want it to go viral.
Well, those are two separate things, man. A good video or a viral video and its editing
wait.
are almost completely disassociated from one another.
I'm going to say at a certain level here, there's nothing I can do in the edit that's going to make it go viral. Either it was good script writing or not. Now I can, right? It's the polish that's heard. A bad editor can take something great and make it terrible. A great editor can take something terrible and make it less terrible, but can't make it great. There is no recipe. There's no magic trick up the sleeve that can go, oh, well, if we just put this filter on, if we just go grab this effect from Red Giant, suddenly it'll go viral.
I'd argue that one take, and I shouldn't even say take, I'd wager that a slice of life where someone picked up their camera and catches a Karen freaking out, or, someone road raging, or that slices of life tend to go more viral than here's a story that I've crafted with filters and edits. So I agree with you. You're polishing a turd, but editing is not going to make something go viral.
This is a great thread. It's full of humor, maybe full of humor on a Friday night with your favorite libation in your hand. It's got so much joy of clients' best intentions. There you go. Nice and compassion. Best intentions getting just a little mired in language. Make it more groundbreaking.
You know what I'd love to hear is if folks are coming in and maybe your client is like dad age, which I know is real nebulous, and are they trying to throw in like youth slang, right? And they're trying to use those kind of phrases, which is just cringe to begin with. But I think that would be hysterical. Like, this 50-year-old guy came in a couple of years ago and he was like, this needs to be more on fleek. And like, no, you should not be using that.
My wife is a school teacher. She's a legit school teacher. And I, every now and then will go, why don't you hit me with some of the new language out there? Because I'm just never going to get it into my vernacular on a daily basis. I wish the guys who did, Truth in Advertising. If you haven't seen that, I think we've mentioned it before on the podcast. It's this phenomenal pseudo documentary of people making a commercial going, well, let's just go, make this turd. It is just all these people in advertising being truthful. I would love to see an updated version of it with this sort of language, especially with a bunch of creatives trying to shoot for like 13-year-old language.
I would love to see a video of your wife and you in a whiteboard, and like she writes down terms and you're like, well, I don't know what this is. And it's like multiple choice, right? And she's teaching you these terms, or maybe even a class of dads all trying to learn the lingo, the phraseology, the verbiage, the vernacular of today's youths.
Oh, I love it. It would be great to put a whiteboard behind me here and go, and this is a Philadelphia thing. And what does John mean?
If there's any
did not expect this to go this
directors
way.
listening to this, there's your next viral short, because if you edit it well, it'll go viral.
I would totally be into it. If it wasn't for the kid thing eating up all my time, which is the most wonderful and the most terrible thing about children. Along those lines, I think we're going to do a little bit of the next step here, which is long form. And our next long form piece is, what is your biggest aha moment? So, we're going from this client picking, we elevate. I saw elevate in that thread a couple of times. We're elevating our conversation into what's the biggest aha moments in your career. And I want to thank, by the way, Meze Forte 24. Couldn't get Meze Forte. Had to get Meze Forte 24 for asking this. And I just want to go over a couple of these. Author 84, the imposter syndrome is real and not where I am in my career solely due to luck. Oh man, I don't think that there's anybody in a creative career who's tired of her. Oh, well, the path to overnight success was built over many years. That one I find is just repeated a little much, but true, super true. Spite Store 69, realizing it's more about how you are to work with than how skilled you are. Man, in my experience, if you're a good collaborator, easy to work with, and honestly, just not a jerk, that'll get brought back faster than any neat technique.
There's a great video out there. Neil Gaiman, am I pronouncing his name right? Gaiman?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If not, he'll come and he'll tell us, and I'll happily apologize to him.
He spoke at a commencement ceremony, I want to say like a decade ago, and he said there's 3 things you need to be successful, and only you have to do 2 of them. One is you have to do good work. Number 2 is you have to be on time. Number 3 is people have to like working with you.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's,
and he says, if people don't like working with you, but you're on time and you do good work, that'll keep you employed. If people like you and you are on time, but your work isn't that good, they'll keep you around because you're a good guy. So as long as you do 2 out of those 3 things, and of course I'm paraphrasing a great speech, I recommend you check that out, because the more you think about it, it's like that meme where you're like, no, wait, you're right.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good, fast, cheap, just phrased, for a little different audience. And right with it, this one also really appeals to me, really rubs me in the cockles the right way.
And subcockles?
Cockles, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 code to my luggage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 code to my luggage. An ode, by the way, to Spaceballs. Older editor told me the trick to it, aging in this business is care enough that you still do good work. Care too much, you'll go insane. Care too little, and you'll phone it in and stop getting hired. It's important to find that balance. 10 years ago, and he was right. And then
I love it.
Summer camp counselor, listen to this one. Push back twice and then cash the check was the advice I got recently and helps. I mean, this is the beauty for me of our editors, is as great as we get social conversations in person or virtually, this just should be part of every professional's reading this one thread. When I realized I didn't have, go ahead.
I was going to share my aha moment, which I've shared many times to many people, because I'm hopeful that if it inspired me, it'll inspire someone else. I was at a industry summit probably a decade ago, and a very important figure in the technical post-production world had the microphone. He was talking to everyone at the summit. So we're talking, 400 or 500 people. And he jokingly said, I haven't needed a resume since 19 blah, blah, blah. And for some reason that crystallized everything. Like, one of the reasons you're successful is obviously you know what you're doing and you know people, but you've never, if that's true, you haven't had to worry about the font on your resume, or, do you have raised lettering on your business card, or how do I compete with people who may have more experience or whatnot? It was because he didn't need to rely on the base level of what you need for employment, which is a resume. He was able to say, I've made a name for myself. And because of that, I can, as I took it, I can go anywhere, I can do anything, and people know who I am. And that was kind of the genesis of well, I could just be a cog in a wheel and do my tech stuff and do my media stuff. And then when it's time to move on or the company closes, here's my resume and I have to fight for 50, 100, 150 other people for the same job. Or do I make a name for myself where I can go to companies and say, I want to work for you? And I found that the latter is much more appealing, and it helps me sleep a lot better at night when I know that, it is easier to get a job because your name is out there and you're not just a faceless name.
I love that. It's a great story. The one that has been more prevalent the last decade is whenever I think something is shit, whenever I'm frustrated, whenever I'm feeling depressed about whatever's going on, whether it's professional, personal, the timeline, get some sleep. There is almost nothing, as dark as things get, that about 8 hours of good sleep, which may in itself be brutally hard, hasn't helped my attitude. Because if the cut is crap, there's still nothing I can do about that if the footage was crap. But the only thing I can do is adjust my attitude towards it, and sleep probably. And this is the interesting part about that, Michael. And it is, I think, kind of a really telling part. In the beginning part of my career, I took it as a piece of proof of manliness or facility,
Post don't
how
stop.
long I can go without sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the dumbest thing ever. I mean, sure, I've done 24. Sure, I've done a 48. I could keep going. And it's terrible. Literally, my aha moment was, hey, rather than staying up all night, why don't I get at least 6 to 8 hours? And at least I'll look at it with fresh eyes, with a fresh brain, and it's made such a difference. I, of course, sort of, is there a patron? Is Bob a patron saint or a patron antichrist? I don't know.
Well, an angel of one form or another.
Sure. I will read Bob's verbatim. I like all the original replies to this post. I have story after story about the opportunities were given to me when I had no qualifications. I credit this now to employers that were too cheap to hire qualified people that could do the job. One of the most defining moments was when I was hired in 1980 by General Camera, the Panavision rep, to be their head video tech. They were getting the new Panacam, the first film video hybrid camera, CEI with Panavision lenses. I'd never touched a camera in my life, and all of a sudden here was this camera with this big CCU and tons of screwdriver adjustments. I had no idea what any of them ever did. I guess they call that getting thrown out of the frying pan into the fire. When you're under that much pressure, you have two choices: figure it out or get fired.
Fake it till you make it?
Sure. The only pain point there is the constant of people trying to get human beings for less money. It's its own cringe. Don't let yourself get abused. It's nothing worse when I meet somebody who's been like working as an intern for like more than 6 months. And I go, we really need to have legislation on the word intern beyond school. Like, you can only do it for like 3 months and then got to start. I just want to do one or two more. XVF9 had a senior editor tell me openly we were just button pushers. Was in response to seeing some of the other editors getting way too attached to their cuts. Like, I don't take it completely literally. We can bring more than button pushing. We're just one cog in a big production. Our value is how well we perform that job. Interestingly, there's always that, well, at some level we are, and some level we're not. I always heard it described as the story is told 3 times: on the page, in the direction, and in the edit. And while the edit doesn't have as much freedom as the other spots, the editor is the last person with their hands on the hot potato. We are all.
I think you should have that on a plaque, and instead of editors having like live, laugh, love, they should have that.
Nice.
Story is told in 3 places, right? The page, the direction, and the edit.
Maybe. And right now you're in the edit. Maybe. Right. And
that's right. You are. It's like one of those mall kiosks. You are here, and the editor hangs that in their edit bay.
If I have the time, I'm going to go over, see if I can get that put on stickers before the end of the year.
I like it.
Okay, maybe we'll sell it through our editors. This thread goes on. It's a beautiful thread. It's absolutely worth taking a look at. It's those aha moments that we need in life. And, we have a variety of them, whether it's technical, whether it's professional, whether it's personal. And sometimes it's, this is the best person I've ever met. I better marry her before somebody else does, sort of thing. It's always a fun story. I want to do really two others in our long form. Having an existential crisis as an editor, I forgot how to edit. This is from Pantone 232C. By the way, Michael, I should try and figure out what color Pantone 232C is. This might sound ridiculous, but I've noticed that I've basically forgot how to edit. Now I just don't know what I should do to edit well. I've been working for an editor for the past several years. Last year, I could happily edit promptly. Now I just stare at my timeline for hours without doing anything. It's starting to affect my ability to meet deadlines and projects. And when I do make an edit with reasonable intentions, people who watch it point out it makes no sense at all. I tried to take a break, watching for various works or inspiration and other things, but I don't seem to find a way out of the state of being blank. Has anyone gone through this? And I would think this is one of those safety net important moments. The very, very first post, very first reply by Coco. I would suggest you go see a doctor ASAP. It'd be indicative of a number of medical issues. How is your work-life balance? Any stress? How is your sleep? It could be a classic case of burnout, but then again, go see a professional to get to the bottom of it. The OP responds in here, by the way.
Yeah.
My sleep schedule has been okay, but I think I may not have made enough effort towards my work-life balance. It didn't cross my line. This could be a medical issue. Thank you for taking this seriously, and I'll see a doctor just in case. Regardless of where you lie about the pandemic, I just read a thing where I think it's 14%. That's 1 out of every 7 Americans. One out of every 7 has had some form of long-form COVID with some impairment. And this industry is no different than any other, except that it's a cerebral industry. It's like writing. Have you run into any of this sort of stuff, about not being able to, whether it's blank page syndrome or edit?
It was a lot of things when I ran into it. I wasn't editing full time, and I had kind of retired, I guess, for lack of a better term, from doing post audio. But I was just very laissez-faire about just about everything, and knowing that I already had depression and all the other things that you take medication for. I realized that having a medical doctor to prescribe drugs, and then a therapist or psychiatrist to work on the mental issues, each of them were treating me in a way that made sense for their profession, right? You go to a doctor and you say, my arm hurts. Oh, maybe you broke a bone or something. Let's do this. But maybe there's something else, right? So what I found, and it wasn't cheap, but it's integrated medicine. And that's where you go to a facility that the folks that work with you on your psyche and your head are also the folks who are working on what's wrong with your body or what's different with your body. And it turned out that I had a chemical imbalance here and I needed talk therapy for this. And when those two things came together and they worked in, I don't want to say harmony, but worked in lockstep, that's what fixed, didn't fix everything, but gave me a path to this is the right way to go. And it was something that I wouldn't have gotten if I had just gone to a psychiatrist or a therapist or just gone to my GP. So I can't recommend enough integrated medicine if you're really hitting a brick wall and neither medical routes are working for you.
I on the big picture side, early in a different life, in a different career, I was involved in a physical therapy facility, and everybody who saw an orthopedic surgeon was told either the surgeon didn't want to cut you or did want to cut you. And that was it. and didn't want to cut you because it would affect, his insurance rates or her insurance rates, that they wouldn't produce a good outcome. Yay, don't do something. Or, yeah, I want to cut you because it will be a good outcome, I think. And you're rolling dice along those lines. So yeah, everybody's got that sort of, they bring to the table their specialty and often can't see outside of that tunnel.
I will say that the first part that the OP mentions is that I, stare at a timeline and I just don't know how to edit. I also understand I haven't cut for a while and now I don't have strong feelings about whether the timing of this cut or the beat is right. And that's just not inexperience, but just I've been out of the game too long. And I completely get that. As someone who doesn't edit all the time, there were a couple of years where I didn't cut. And then I went to go cut an episode where I had to cut back and forth between two talking heads. And none of it felt right. It just felt off. It felt weird because I just was out of the rhythm. So at the top level, I completely understand that. But as the OP goes deeper, I think this is more than just I've lost my confidence in my ability to edit.
One of the things that I talk about frequently is getting to the bottom of the page, getting to the end of the timeline, getting some piece of coverage in there. And it's whether it's Steven Pressfield. Steven Pressfield was the one he's written a bunch of films. He didn't write his first film until he was like nearly 40. Wrote, amongst other things, Legend of Bagger Vance. But he wrote a phenomenal creative book called The War of Art. Not the art of war, but the war of art. And basically, he goes, every day we're battling with our creativity, with this dragon, with this monster, preventing us from being creative. And the sole goal is to get the first draft done. Just get to the end of the page. Get something on the timeline. And one of the things is, as much as we roll our eyes around AI, because I think both you and I both embrace it. Mm-hmm. And also, it's not, we're all not going to become unemployed.
We're seeing
tomorrow.
The glass as being half full and half empty simultaneously.
Better said than I could. I when I first saw this, said, what you should do is you should go and write what it is you're trying to tell the story of, and ask ChatGPT to tell you the first 15 shots, and just throw those 15 shots down. And they can be right, they can be wrong. It won't matter. You'll know if they're right or wrong, and therefore you'll have a direction. I'm hoping that it's not a medical issue. I'm hoping it's blank page syndrome more than anything else.
But best of luck to you. If you're listening to this, best of luck. A lot of us have been there, and we're all pulling for you because no one likes to see a fellow creative run into something like this. So good luck to you.
So Pantone 232C, we hope this is a reason why you'll listen to the podcast forever, and just message us and let us know that you're okay. If you do, we'll bring it up in a future episode. So we've gone through our basics. I've got one more, and I think it's important both because we haven't been on here for a little and because we see a lot of what I would call, come on, dour. Not with the happy.
The world's on fire, Jeff. The world's on fire, and the fire just gets hotter every day.
It's always been on fire. I think William Joel, wrote a song about this. I heard he updated the lyrics too.
Oh God, that cover sucks. Oh, it's the updated. Oh, it's
hold on. I haven't heard it.
Did you hear he ragged on it at one of his concerts?
No, I didn't. But I'm much more interested just because it's a beautiful diversion here. I haven't heard the new Beatles song. Is it good?
Yeah, it's very Beatles-esque, as you can imagine. I don't think it's great, but for folks who are into the Beatles, it's the last watering hole. So I don't think anyone's going to come out and say, well, this sucks. I think the utilization of AI was done fantastically. So it's not bad, but it's not great.
I haven't heard it yet. I still want to make it a point to go hear it. Hey, along those notes, about the fire, the Beatles, I'd love to hear some reasons for optimism in the 2024 work year, if anyone has some. And I'm going to assume here that Anubis 266, which I feel like Anubis was the god of death in Egypt. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure on that one. Hello, I'm a professional freelance editor, 20 years. 2023 happened. I've been struggling to find work this year. I found 2 well-paying gigs. Mid-year have kept me afloat, but other than that, it's crickets. I've researched some of the reasons why the industry is taking a downturn. I've convinced myself that for Hollywood to return to normal, both the current strikes need to be resolved, which they have, thankfully. I've heard all the reasons why we're doomed: overseas replacements, absurdly low budgets, AI will eliminate us. While I'm sure there are many of you who believe we're in trouble and only the elite will survive, I'd be interested to hear some logical reasons why next year might not be so bad. So, number one, and I think this is such a beautiful comment here by NES Salesman. Well, lately I've been in talks with jobs that I eventually do not get, and at least that's a step up from the radio silence from the past year. I gotta love that. Hemorrhoid Hamburger, by the way, as always, Michael, some of these usernames are just the best. I don't believe streaming services can continue to maintain profitability if they continue to raise prices of their services without continuing to introduce new content. I'm an optimist that the giant stop on production on all platforms will be sorted through and things will normalize. The model requires it. And Kazagul, which may or may not be a Lord of the Rings reference. Hello, fellow reality TV editor. Odds are we've worked together at some point in the last 20 years. It's unfortunate too soon after the SAG strike to know whether or not work will pick back up. You're right about the IAC and Teamsters coming up next year. I suspect the ATSI strike will strike this time. For that reason alone, productions may not pick up as much as they could. I work in development now, so I tend to hear about buying a new shows earlier than most. I'll let the sub know if the environment changes. We'll do one more. Nice house, fresh quality content, FQC, it's simple. Heavy demand for it. Despite TikTok and the like hunger for fresh quality content, it's hardly abated. Michael, it's easy to be doom and gloom. Did you look through this thread much?
Yeah. Well, things are rarely all one direction or another, right? So great, there's going to be more editing jobs next year. Yeah, but AI is going to take them, right? So there's always going to be a pros and cons. Obviously, this strike, as we hope, coming to an end, will be great. I think there is always more platforms to edit for. There's always a new streaming service. There's always new content coming out, or the need for new content. And it's, as been mentioned, FQC. So I think those are all good things. Of course, you take that with there's going to be more people who want to be editors and who are going to be applying for the same job. So you kind of got to do the, take the good, take the bad there. But I don't think any of those are inherently bad.
How about this? Edit man, I hadn't worked in about 7 months until this week. Last weekend, in the span of 3 days, I got 4 separate calls and then one this morning. Nothing fancy or particularly exciting, but work is work and it's a weight off my shoulders being booked again. That's to say, from one assistant editor's experience, things are looking up. I think that at a certain level, as much as I regret the next sentence I'm going to say, we're coming into an election year. There's going to be a lot of advertising that gets thrown around, a lot of media saturation that's going to occur. It might be easier in some ways to be an East Coast editor, but the fact is, there's going to be political spots in every single market. There's going to be a push into social media, regardless if how evil we think social media may or may not be. Reality TV is still really popular and cheaper, not better, cheaper to produce. We're going to need new content no matter what we do, even if it's behind the scenes, even if it's reminiscing like the Beatles over stuff. So fingers crossed. There seems to be a lot of positive upbeats and very little people doing doom and gloom in this thread. So I really do enjoy this particular item. I'd love to hear some reasons for optimism. And, if I could think of a way that I could pull it off, I would love to see like a weekly or a monthly things I'm grateful for thread in our editors, because it's easy to be a pessimist. It's a little bit harder to go, hey, yeah, but I'm grateful for X, Y, and Z.
Track down Jesse Averna at Droid on Twitter. He's been a constant ray of optimism as long as I can remember, and one of the most thoughtful people I've met in a long time. So
Jesse's
you need some
amazing.
daily positivity for the creative areas. Track down Jesse.
I don't know if he's still there. Who does it cut for?
I'm not.
Brought to you by the letter E.
Oh no, he cut for Sesame Street, yeah, but I think he's moved on since then. He made freelance, but didn't he go to DreamWorks and then he was at anyway, we'll probably have to cut this. But I thought he had moved on. No,
we shouldn't cut this. We should leave it in here. I think Jesse's just a wonderful human being. And when you look at the fact that he used to work on Sesame Street, it makes a lot of sense. Just with that positive sort of outlook. So Jesse, we're thinking about you. Maybe one day you'll come join us.
Periodically, I try to get him to come out from behind the screen, but he has a lovely family, and I'm sure he'd rather be there than be networking.
Absolutely. Let's move over. Let's do a couple dopamine hits. Just something Michael or I found that was new, that was kind of neat out there, and then we'll wrap up with close. And Michael, you'll be of course impressed because we're right now just hitting the hour mark. Just now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my dopamine hit.
Yeah, okay. Your dopamine hit. Let's start with this one right here. Mononodes, utility DCTLs. That's Resolve Control Language, DCTL. I think that's it. And these are things people can build and add into Resolve. Michael, which of these are you using? Why are you using these? Why did you call our attention to these?
I am not great at color grading. For me, it's even color correction is difficult. And I use the DCTL mononodes to highlight the proper skin tone. So if I'm underexposed, overexposed, if my tint is wrong, this helps me dial in what color the face should be from kind of an agnostic standpoint, right on the skin color line on your scopes. And this helps me dial it in, especially when I'm shooting log or raw. So I use this, and it just helps me get my skin tone in a little bit better.
It's a great tool. I've seen variations of it in different ways, but I just love the way, in fact, I want to punch in on this. I love the way that it sits back and just shows you skin tones really clear and visible, making it a little bit easier along with whatever that exposure heat map does. So that's a neat tool to add to the game. I'm going to pick let's do your other one, your second one here, just because it's the way it's lined up. Tell us about TuneMyMusic, transfer playlists between music services.
So there's a lot of companies out there that are doing this. I use both Pandora and Spotify. I pay for both. Both have their pros and cons. But what I dislike most is that Spotify, they'll pre-make playlists for you, but trying to create your own playlist is a pain in the butt. And what if you've already curated one? Like, I fired up one of my old computers a couple months ago and found a playlist that I used to listen to in college. And I'm like, I'd love to have this on Spotify, but how do I transfer my iTunes playlist to Spotify? Well, this application allows you to take playlists created in different applications and get them converted to Spotify. So I took this one step further. So I was like, you know what? I want to find all the top 10 hits in the 80s or 90s, but I don't want things that hit number one. I want everything that was in the top 10 but didn't hit number one, and I want all of those in the US top 100, and I want all of those in a playlist. So I used AI to gather that data, put it into a 2-column CSV, then upload that to Spotify, and Spotify says, oh, I have all these artists and all these songs. Here's your playlist from a CSV file. So this allows you to create your own playlist without having to even have a media player, or take an existing playlist from an existing platform and get it into Spotify.
That's pretty cool. I got to ask, why did you not take the top hit? Was it because you figured that was one you would be tired of?
Yeah. Because as someone who, my wife and I, we cook every night, and we will just pick a random Spotify playlist, and a lot of times it's top road songs or top friends dinners music or whatever, and it's always going to be the ones that were uber popular. And I'm like, yeah, I wanted to kind of go down a few notches. There's some songs I don't need to hear. Right Said Fred, I'm Too Sexy. Was there a number one hit in the 90s? Yes. Do I need to hear it again? No. So getting rid of some of those ones that are just overplayed or just not interested in, I decided to do that.
That's a great solution. And again, just so we have that discussion, it's called TuneMyMusic. We'll go to the first of my two. It's called Stream Voodoo, and basically it is nearly a one-click send solution. It'll take SDI, it'll take stuff out of the switcher, it'll take stuff out of software, out of hardware. Basically, you can go grab an iOS app and just say, I'd like to send it from here to here, click, and you're done. I believe it definitely does 4K. I believe, Michael, it can do...
Hang on, go back to that.
Sure.
This is my PSA. Stop using that stock footage. That stock footage of a creative agency, woman editing, guy editing. I can't stand it. There's so few examples of that content, and every media company uses those. So this is my PSA for any of you listening. Stop using those. Find new footage. Thank you.
What makes this fascinating to me is you could use something on Parsec or something on a cloud, or from where I am to where you are. We don't have to figure out all the network bridges. I essentially give you a code, click play, and you're watching it. I believe it does, I think it does 422 and maybe even does 444, which becomes a very interesting case for remote color and remote playback. I kind of, do you remember, of course you remember the days, Avid's, I think instantly of Avid's Nitrous, Avid's Adrenaline, and Avid's Mojo, because like of 3 product names, why couldn't they find something that meant fast or something? They went with Mojo. I think Voodoo is a little bit better. It's my first thing was like, was there any Mojo in their Voodoo?
There was a Voodoo card back in the day, 3D Voodoo, right? Wasn't that a GPU?
I do remember that. I believe you were correct. The other one that I wanted to bring up... Is
it just video? I mean, so is there any
video and audio?
It
does video and audio. I just don't know any tracks of audio. But
so
I
you
assume...
can connect to a microphone.
I believe so.
Okay.
And it'll take stuff out of a switcher, so you could take a Blackmagic ATEM or an ATEM Mini, and I believe you could take it either in or out. I think you might need another computer in there to pull it in. But from I don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out the tech or my clients. That's the big appeal of a frame always has been, well, the client doesn't have to really do too much to get to the review or approval process. That's what this very much does, is you could have somebody play without having to come to your office. You hit it, play on your system. It's got low latency and they're watching it local to them.
Okay. Good find.
The other item is just a fun one. It's called Fuzzy Maps, and it's an AI-driven map. Again, obligatory eye roll, over the AI. But this idea that you can say, I'd like directions to McDonald's closest to City Hall, but avoid passing in front of any schools. That one's a little creepy, to be honest. Bike directions to a nearby history museum, avoid going over any hills. That one I think I like a little bit better. I don't know what the permutations of it are, but I do like the idea that I need to go somewhere and I got kids in the car and I don't want to pass by this one, like the ice cream store, because they're going to want to stop and get ice cream. Not that my kids don't get ice cream, but you know what I think it's really a clever idea. I don't know how far or how deep or how insidious. It's just a fun item. It's called fuzzymaps.com.
Good find.
Thanks. I think that brings us up to close. We do this each time. Do you have anything personally you want to bring up? 5 things.
I did release a few weeks ago a new episode of 5 Things. It's on filmmaking in 2030. If you're familiar with Movie Labs, which is a think tank that was formed by the major studios in Hollywood, and this white paper that was done in 2019 talks about what direction the studios are moving into how they want to make films in 2030 and how they would like all of their vendors, all the partners they work with to fall in line so they can make movies like this. And it's gone under the radar a little bit outside of the Hollywood realm. And I thought, let's demystify it. So I break down the 10 concepts, the 10 principles, as they call them. And that's what the latest episode of 5 Things is.
I of course, love principle number 4, which is the search for more money. Again, a Spaceball reference in the episode, is never a bad thing. What was your biggest takeaway personally about digging through this?
The biggest one is the think tank Movie Labs put together a gap analysis. So how far we've come since 2019 and what areas do we still have to hit by 2030 roughly. And, we still have, it's a little over 6 years now to get there. We're still behind. A lot of the gaps, the easier to grasp, the low-hanging fruit, as they say, has been done. But there's a lot of things that are going to take a Herculean effort. Like one of them is permissions to use assets in any project will be based on a person. So no matter what job you go to, no matter what gig you get, your permissions to access assets within that project will change depending on your employment status. And this will be based on people, which, how is this? Are we doing biometrics? How are we tracking this to the person and not a username and password? So
NFTs.
There are some things
NFTs. NFTs.
Yeah, NFTs. Yes. So there are some things which I think are going to be very difficult to do, but everyone's working towards it. If you go to any industry event, the last big one, the HPA Tech Summit, they talked about the Movie Labs paper every 5 minutes. It's like if you had a bingo card, it would have been filled.
Wow.
So it's something that everyone's working towards in the kind of professional M&E studio space. And like most things, it will then trickle down to be done on more pedestrian or more prosumer or more lower budget stuff as well.
Sure. No, it sounds like it's a great episode. That's one of the beautiful things about 5 Things in general is it's this really nice marriage of a succinct consolidation of something very technical in very layman's terms for people. And if you don't hear it enough, I appreciate it. I've used it quite a bit. Where can we find you on Reddit? Where can we find you outside of Reddit?
On the socials at Michael Kamas. You can also go to michaelkamas.com, or you can hit 5thingsseries.com. And if you're on Reddit, I go by AVGuru1.
I love that. My name is Jeff Greenberg, and you can find me at J Greenberg Consulting or at FilmGeek. I'm a consultant and an educator in post-production. And like everybody else, I make the work as well as eat the work, as they say. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Tune in again next time and keep reading our editors. Michael, any last words?
I'm good. I'm out.
All right. We're both out. Have a good rest of your day.